Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. A hot mic moment caught Russian President Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping discussing organ transplants. House Speaker Mike Johnson weighed in, calling the conversation "speaking of evil." The U.S. sanctions a Chinese chemical company and two of its representatives. The State Department accuses them of coordinating shipments of illicit opioids into the country. A court ruling deals a blow to the Trump administration's deportation efforts, and the Defense Department deputizes military attorneys to work as immigration judges. President Trump says China, Russia, and North Korea are conspiring against the U.S. What message is Beijing sending with its military parade? A Chinese man engineers a rare protest in Chongqing, China, ahead of the World War II anniversary parade. He managed to flee China with his family. Find out how he did it.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. President Trump is welcoming Poland's newly elected president to the White House. Karol Nawrocki is a close ally of Trump and took office last month.
I just want to say it's an honor to have you. We'll be discussing trade and various other things, the things that you discuss. We'll have a few questions from you, and then we'll get on to a discussion. Then we'll have lunch, and then he goes and he meets with the Pope. And that'll be very exciting. And say hello to the Pope for me.
This is Nawrocki's first foreign visit since becoming president. He says U.S.-Poland relations are very strong and based on common values. Trump also says the U.S. is much aligned with Poland. Poland shares a long border with Ukraine and has been staunchly opposed to Russia's war. Trump says he watched the military parade in Beijing that involved Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Trump says these leaders are going to find out how good their relationship with him is over the next week or two.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see you got 7,819 people killed last week. Russian soldiers and Ukraine soldiers, right? Not American soldiers, not soldiers from Poland. But they're human beings, they're souls. They have parents, they wave goodbye to their parents, and their parents never see them again. That's the end of them. Over a stupid war, and I want to see it stopped.
Nawrocki has advocated for a strong U.S.-Poland alliance and said that he was inspired by Trump's MAGA movement. Poland is a strategically important ally within NATO, especially given its shared border with Ukraine. Among NATO allies, Poland has the highest defense spending as a percentage of GDP. Roughly 10,000 American troops are currently stationed in Poland, and Polish leaders are eager to keep them. Trump also says the U.S. would like to keep the troops there. President Trump reacted to China's military parade, which marked the anniversary of China's defeat of the Japanese in World War II. As the parade began on Wednesday local time, Trump asked on Truth Social whether Xi would mention the massive amount of support and blood America gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom. The president also accused the leaders present of bad intentions, writing, quote, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America." The Kremlin responded today saying Putin was not conspiring with China's Xi and North Korea's Kim Jong-un against the United States. The parade marks the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender. China observers say the Chinese Communist Party uses the occasion to push a false narrative that it led the fighting against Japan. They point out it was the Republic of China's government which ruled China before retreating to Taiwan. The EU also weighed in. Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said today the leaders of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea represent an autocratic alliance challenging the rules-based international order. While in China today, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Putin thanked his counterpart for providing troops used to fight against Ukraine. The two leaders met formally at a state guest house after attending a military parade in Beijing. According to the Kremlin, Putin and Kim traveled from a formal reception to the negotiations in the same car. South Korean assessments found North Korea sent around 15,000 troops to Russia since last year. And also today, Russia says it wants to help China overtake the U.S. as the world's biggest producer of nuclear power. As of now, China produces only around half of the nuclear energy the U.S. produces. Beijing is trying to build dozens of reactors to overtake Washington. The head of Russia's state nuclear cooperation says Moscow is already helping China in trying to achieve that goal. Putin also says he's ready to meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, but only if he comes to Moscow. Putin added that it remains to be seen whether such a meeting is worthwhile. The Russian leader said he thinks Ukraine needs to cancel martial law, hold elections, and hold a referendum about territorial questions. Ukraine didn't hold presidential elections after Zelensky's term ended due to the war and martial law being in place. Meanwhile, a hot mic picks up Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping discussing organ transplants and possibly living to 150 years old. This was caught while they walked shoulder to shoulder to see a massive military parade in Beijing today.
在这样发展，人类的器官会不断的移植，甚至越活越年轻，甚至会长生不老。预测呢，本世纪呢，可能未来可以活到150岁，也不能说是说没等。
Putin and Xi were walking toward the Tiananmen rostrum, where they viewed the parade. The moment was live-streamed on both Chinese state media and international media. Putin later confirmed to reporters that he indeed discussed longevity with Xi. North Korean regime leader Kim Jong-un was smiling and looking in the direction of Putin and Xi, but it was not clear if the conversation was being translated for him. Human rights groups have found that the Chinese Communist regime has been forcibly harvesting human organs from live prisoners of conscience on a wide scale for 2 decades. The organs were sold for profit to those needing transplants, including foreign visitors. Victims include Falun Gong practitioners and ethnic and religious minorities. Following the news of Putin and Xi Jinping's discussion on organ transplants and immortality, House Speaker Mike Johnson responded to a question raised by NTD this morning. Listen.
Yeah, I will tell you that we've heard some horrific stories of this organ transplants and all of this in China, that they take it from unwilling donors, okay, to put it mildly. And the fact that they were caught on a hot mic, first I've heard of that, is very telling. It tells you what their worldview is in contrast to ours. Speaking of evil, we've heard of, terrible stories. I've heard terrible stories of the Uyghurs, for example, this persecuted religious minority that they're using to harvest organs from. I mean, look, I've not seen the evidence of that, but if the leaders are talking about it, it should alarm us. The United States, we're going to stand for morality and ethics, and we're going to stand against that. There's legislation, as you know, that would address it, and we might need to put that at the top of the priority list if that's what's happening. So that's news to me.
A brave act of defiance in communist China. A Chinese man staged a rare protest days before Xi Jinping hosted global leaders for a World War II parade in Beijing. The man projected anti-communist slogans onto a building in a large city in southwestern China. Giant slogans saying, quote, "Only without the Communist Party can there be a new China," and "No more lies, we want the truth. No more slavery, we want freedom." They were projected onto a skyscraper in Chongqing, a city of 32 million. A separate video published on X showed policemen breaking into the empty hotel room where the projector was stationed. The New York Times has published an interview with a 43-year-old Chongqing native named Qi Hong, who told the paper he had carried out the protest. Qi said he set up the projector earlier in August and left China with his wife and daughters. He said he operated the projector and hotel room camera remotely from his current location in the United Kingdom. He said the images were beamed for 50 minutes before police found the projector. The military parade in Beijing today marked the anniversary of China's defeat of the Japanese in World War II. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Rebecca Grant, Vice President at the Lexington Institute and National Security Analyst. So, Dr. Grant, good to see you. This is the first time that the leaders of North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China had gathered at the same event. What is the significance here? President Trump saying that the countries are conspiring against the U.S.
Yes, the first time in 66 years that we've seen these three leaders together. So it's clearly a signal that China is attempting to assume the mantle of world leadership, and that North Korea and Russia are very important to this quest. But it's also a sign, I think, back to China itself to say, hey, this is a reminder of the People's Liberation Army, how it became the CCP. And it's partly, I think, Xi Jinping trying to shore things up internally. There's no question, though, also a challenge to Trump at a time when, through tariffs and other measures, Trump is absolutely asserting U.S. leadership in the world.
How does this parade, military parade, compare to previous ones? We know that Beijing spent somewhere around $5 billion.
Right. So we haven't seen a full-scale military parade like this since, I believe, 2019, so a pretty long time. And of course, there were no spectators. It was very tightly choreographed. But the parade officials made sure to paint in English characters all the names of the missiles. And they are attempting to show that they have really modernized the People's Liberation Army in all its branches. You know, the star of the show, I think, is the PLA rocket force, which Xi Jinping is very fond of. He's elevated them, and they control not only the conventional, but the nuclear missiles. We saw not new missiles per se, but a few potential new variants going back to the old DF-5, which has been around since the 70s, but now has a new variant, and up to the more modern missiles that are medium range and theoretically are used to strike targets out in the Pacific. So this is a pretty strong display of Chinese military power. Some of it a little underwhelming. You saw some things there, whether it was the drones or the lasers mounted on trucks. I'm going to tell you, the U.S. has far better systems than what you're looking at.
How strong would you say, Dr. Grant, is this alliance among North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China? Is it as strong as they might wanted to make it appear? And are there any real-world risks to this alliance on the horizon?
On the strength of this alliance, make no mistake, this Russia-China alliance, along with North Korea, Iran, and others, this is a big military danger for the U.S. I would say right now, the alliance is pretty strong. Not that these countries truly like or respect one another. I'd say quite the contrary. But look at the economic picture. It is China that enables Russia to keep fighting in Ukraine. It's China's support that enables Putin to not agree right away to ceasefire talks. North Korea, of course, very dependent on China. And I think we see here China prioritizing its relationship again with North Korea. They like that it bothers the U.S. and South Korea and the rest of that region. Russia and North Korea also much closer ties. North Korea is giving ammunition to Russia. They've also sent troops to fight in the Ukraine war, lost about 2,000 troops. What are they getting in return? Probably some help with their nuclear arsenal, unfortunately.
So whether it's South Korea, Japan, or other Southeast Asian nations, how are they looking at this parade? What might they be feeling after seeing such a show of strength from China?
Well, I think it's pretty much what was expected. Japan and South Korea in particular, who over the last few years have formed a much tighter alliance, despite some of their own historical grievances and differences. The region sees that China is truly a threat. And other than North Korea, they don't have a lot of allies or friends in this region. In contrast, you've got very strong U.S. alliances with Japan, with South Korea, the Philippines, of course, Australia, New Zealand. And now the real wild card here is India, which has been part of this U.S.-led dialogue in the region. But of course, India's leader Modi attending the meetings before the parade and seeming to want to develop some closer economic ties with China. But again, most of India's interests really lie outside of China and with the West. So I think the region was not surprised by this display. This is why they themselves have been increasing their armaments and welcoming more alliances with each other and with the U.S.
So, Dr. Grant, I want to follow up on a previous point you mentioned that the alliance between Russia, China, North Korea, Iran is relatively strong. But you said that they don't necessarily like each other. Does that mean that as long as their interests are aligned, that this alliance will remain strong? Another way to say this is that if the interests diverge, then the alliance won't be as strong. Is that the case? And do you see their interests diverging anytime soon?
Absolutely right. It's pragmatic and it's based on interests. Don't forget, China and Russia do have some ongoing border disputes. And of course, the issues with China and India are clear. So yes, if their interests diverge, then the alliance will change and weaken, as we've seen happen historically. You know, I think part of that is in President Trump's mind as he seeks to try to find some leverage for Putin to talk about ending the war in Ukraine. But really, you know, for Russia especially, I think it's a big choice. Russia's economy is sustained on defense production and Chinese purchases of their oil. They are missing out on AI. They are missing out on so many other developments due to sanctions, which is as it should be. But it means that Russia tumbles down the list and is really no longer a major world power economically. And that's kind of the price of being close to China. Putin likes the wartime stance, and that suits Xi Jinping at the moment. And of course, I think it suits Kim Jong-un as well right now.
Okay, one last point here, Dr. Grant, and this I found interesting. According to a former professor at Peking University, Yuan Hongbing, who now lives in Australia, apparently the CCP has contingency plans in the event of a Russian defeat in Ukraine. And the plan appears to show that maybe there's a lack of confidence in the Russian regime's stability. How are you reading that? What does Russia's future mean for the CCP?
Well, that is very interesting. And I think it tells you that China was not impressed with the military performance of Russia, particularly in the early phases of this war. And it's true, Ukraine, with Western help, is pretty much holding Russia on the ground. Their air power has proved ineffective, and they don't have the sophisticated, integrated, multi-domain force that China aspires to. And of course, you've got China, and I think everyone else, wondering what happens in the event of Putin's demise at some point in time. It just tells you the lack of ongoing comfort between these two countries. They know it can go from the strong alliance that it is, unfortunately, right now, to being a much frostier relationship if interests change.
Okay, well, Dr. Grant, thank you very much. We always enjoy hearing your insight.
Thank you.
The largest drug seizure of its kind by U.S. law enforcement. The U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. says it has seized enough chemicals to make up to about 420,000 pounds of meth. We have that story when we come back.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure, natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
More than 300,000 kilos of chemicals used to make meth have been seized off the high seas. It's the first time the U.S. has issued a warrant for materials that support terrorism. This comes after President Trump signed an executive order that allows cartels and other organizations to be designated as global terrorists.
This is a first in many ways, and not just in terms of the use of the statute, but in terms of the size of the seizure. And again, I have to tip my hat to those individuals involved in this investigation. This is serious business, folks. This isn't about people just sitting at a desk writing a warrant. This is serious, dangerous business.
U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro made the announcement this morning in Houston. Her office says this was the largest seizure of such chemicals ever by U.S. law enforcement. Pirro said they intercepted 1,300 barrels of meth precursors tied to the Sinaloa drug cartel in Mexico. She said the shipments came from China. Pirro estimated that the substances could have made about 420,000 pounds of meth. She said the street value would be more than $569 million. Pirro and other law enforcement officials also noted the significance of seizing the chemicals due to the number of lives saved by the drugs not being produced. The United States sanctioned a Chinese chemical company today and two of its representatives. The State Department says they've been manufacturing and coordinating shipments of illicit opioids into the country. The sanctions come amid President Trump's crackdown on drug trafficking into the U.S. The State Department said in a statement today that China plays a central role in the opioid crisis. The department accused Beijing of both failing to stop and actively contributing to the flow of synthetic opioids and chemical precursors into the U.S. According to the CDC, illicit drug overdoses are the #1 cause of death for Americans 18 to 44 years old. U.S. forces have carried out a deadly strike in the Caribbean, targeting a Venezuelan drug boat allegedly linked to the Tren de Aragua gang. President Trump confirmed that 11 members of the group were killed. Here's what we know.
In a major shift in Washington's campaign against drug smuggling, U.S. forces in the southern Caribbean sunk what officials say was a Venezuelan narco-terrorist boat. President Trump said the attack left 11 cartel members dead. Trump confirmed the operation Tuesday during a White House press briefing.
Over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that and you'll be reading about that.
He later posted on Truth Social saying those killed belonged to Tren de Aragua, a U.S.-designated foreign terrorist group operating under Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's control. Trump said the strike took place in international waters and no U.S. forces were harmed. Trump said the boat was part of a wider surge of narcotics flowing out of Venezuela.
We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time, and we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So.
The strike comes just weeks after Washington doubled its reward for Maduro's arrest to $50 million, accusing him of running an international narcotics network. The U.S. also deployed several warships to the waters near Venezuela. Maduro responded by mobilizing militias and vowing Venezuela will never yield to U.S. pressure. Secretary of State Marco Rubio commented after the strike, saying cartels destabilized not only the United States, but the entire Caribbean basin.
So the president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they're operating from and no matter how long they've been able to act with impunity. Those days are over.
Rubio emphasized that U.S. naval patrols will remain in the region for as long as traffickers use Caribbean routes. He's on a regional tour to reinforce the administration's policies. Rubio arrived in Mexico City Tuesday to meet with President Claudia Sheinbaum and Foreign Minister Ramon de la Fuente. They were set to discuss drug trafficking and illegal immigration. He's scheduled to travel to Quito, Ecuador, to continue discussions on regional security and migration issues.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago voiced support for the U.S. strike. He said, quote, "I, along with most of the country, am happy that the U.S. naval deployment is having success in their mission." The Prime Minister added, quote, "The pain and suffering the cartels have inflicted on our nation is immense. I have no sympathy for traffickers." The Prime Minister said that restricting illegal guns, drugs, and human trafficking would decrease violence in the region. And a setback for the Trump administration's deportation push. A federal appeals court ruled yesterday President Trump unlawfully used the Alien Enemies Act to expel Venezuelan illegal immigrants accused of gang ties. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and other border enforcement updates.
In a 2-1 decision, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled it found no invasion or predatory incursion by the criminal gang that Trump cited in a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act. The court ruled the act can't be used in this case, but noted removals may proceed under other immigration laws. Trump signed the proclamation invoking the act on March 15th, stating that members of Venezuela's Tren de Aragua criminal gang have unlawfully infiltrated the United States. The case stems from a lawsuit brought by a group of alleged Tren de Aragua members being held in Texas. Meanwhile, the Defense Department announced Tuesday it will temporarily deputize military officers and certain civilian attorneys to the Justice Department to work as immigration judges. The military attorneys will be granted authority to preside over immigration court hearings. The DoD says the attorneys were requested by the Department of Justice and will help reduce immigration court backlogs, which currently number 3.4 million cases. A group of Trump voters interviewed by Reuters responded to the president's work on border enforcement.
Well, I think he has done a good job closing the border, and I think that he is on the right track trying to round up these criminals that are in the country illegally and deporting them.
No problem with people coming through the front door, but don't come through the back door. Because if you come through my front door, we will shake hands. You come through the back door, you might see my gun.
I have friends too who are in the country without status, but they're good people and they're hardworking people. And that's what we want. We don't want terrorists coming into our country. We don't want child predators and rapists and bad people, people who are DUI for the 4th time. What is that? That's not right.
The Department of Homeland Security Tuesday announced reimbursement opportunities for its local state and law enforcement partners, supporting ICE's crackdown on illegal immigration. For example, a state trooper could identify an illegal immigrant at a DUI checkpoint and then report the discovery directly to ICE, where a supervisor would determine the next steps. The DHS says that trained officers may also exercise limited immigration authority as active participants on ICE-led tasks. Law enforcement agencies will be eligible for quarterly monetary performance awards. Those awards include $1,000 per officer for 90 to 100% success, $750 per officer for 80 to 89% success, and $500 per officer for 70 to 79% in locating illegal immigrants. DHS says it continues to encourage state and local law enforcement agencies to partner with the federal law enforcement campaign by signing cooperation agreements. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Trump administration has announced plans for competitive coal lease sales this year in Alabama, Montana, and Utah. Yesterday's move is part of a broad government effort to bolster domestic coal production. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum says coal has long been the backbone of America's energy and industrial strength. Burgum says the lease sales will create good-paying jobs and support local communities. Trump has signed executive orders aimed at boosting coal production, including designating metallurgical coal as a critical mineral. Coal-burning plants now generate less than 20% of U.S. electricity. However, Trump says that deregulation could revive the industry and support energy security. Critics point to coal's declining competitiveness and environmental impact. Disney has agreed to pay $10 million to settle allegations it violated children's privacy laws on YouTube. The Federal Trade Commission says Disney failed to properly label some videos as being made for kids, opening the door for unlawful data collection. That means data from children under 13 was used for targeting advertising, a violation of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule. The rule requires parental consent before collecting information from kids, something the FTC said Disney ignored despite earlier YouTube warnings. Under the settlement, Disney will launch an audience designation program to ensure videos are correctly marked as made for kids. The company says the deal only applies to its content on YouTube, not on Disney's own platforms. Not all heroes wear capes. Some have YouTube channels. They helped take down a massive fraud ring stealing from U.S. seniors. Find out more about that after the break.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride with being part of these multi-generational businesses. But there's also a significant amount of pressure. My senior year of high school, my dad made the decision that this world no longer needed him in it. I don't know if he was overwhelmed by the bills and checks that weren't going to be coming in because of the strawberries dying off, but it breaks my heart that my dad made a permanent decision for a temporary issue. Don't feel like you have to go through it alone.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
In the mornings, that's my time. Watching the sun come up, I can have a cup of coffee and exercise if I want to. It helps me start the day with a sense of gratitude.
Yay!
Every day is a new opportunity. Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love, your mind.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Federal prosecutors say a group of YouTube creators helped take down a massive fraud ring that stole more than $65 million from U.S. seniors. The scam targeted thousands of victims, some in their 90s, using fake calls to impersonate so-called government agents or tech support staff. The victims were tricked into sending money by wire, cash, or even gift cards. Authorities say the operations were run by Chinese nationals working with scam call centers in India. After a coast-to-coast sweep, 25 suspects are now in custody. Investigators have seized millions of dollars along with luxury cars. But here's where it gets unusual. YouTubers known for scam baiting targeted fraudsters, recorded confrontations, and then handed the evidence to the FBI. Videos from the channels like Scammer Payback and Trilogy Media helped prosecutors identify key suspects. Officials say these videos were crucial in cracking the case and proving that sometimes the internet fights back. A Taiwanese official says the CCP is commemorating a war victory in which it played a minimal role. Joining us now to discuss is Trevor Loudon, an author, filmmaker, and public speaker. For more than 30 years, he has researched Marxist and terrorist movements, as well as the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. Trevor, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Would you mind walking us through what really happened in China's defeat of Japan in World War II, and specifically talk to us about the role that the KMT played and the CCP? What were their actual contributions?
Well, the CCP was using the KMT, the Kuomintang, to fight the Japanese, while the CCP largely stayed in the hinterlands in the northwest of China. They only started to march down into the main part of China through the famous Long March when the war was nearing a close, when it was clear that the Japanese were in retreat. And there is evidence that the CCP was actually sending information to the Japanese as well. So the Kuomintang was doing all of the work. The CCP was just staying in the background when the Kuomintang was exhausted and the Japanese were forced from the country and had to go and fight the Americans in the Pacific. Then the CCP came in and claimed this wondrous victory. So it's a complete fraud to say that the CCP liberated China from the Japanese. They could have, if they had collaborated with the Kuomintang, honestly, they could have driven the Japanese out probably earlier, but that did not suit the CCP. They wanted to wear the Kuomintang down as much as possible so they could defeat them.
And I want to continue on that point that you just mentioned. Even Mao Zedong suggested that the goal was not primarily to defeat Japan, right, but to self-develop. What does that mean, and what was their goal? Why was this the goal?
Well, the goal was to have a Chinese takeover, a CCP takeover of China, and the Kuomintang was the main opposition. So they had to be sacrificed to the Japanese. Meanwhile, the CCP was running a protracted people's war in the countryside. They were building up their forces in the countryside, coming down into southern China through the Long March, and building up guerrilla forces in the countryside, much as what was done in Vietnam many years later. And so a self-development was to use the time during the war to develop the strength of the CCP on the ground in the countryside in preparation for a final takeover when the Japanese were driven from the country. But the whole goal was to establish communism. The Japanese was secondary. The Japanese were useful in that they destroyed much of the KMT's fighting forces, and the Chinese the Communist Party just exploited that, as they traditionally do. They never fight when someone else can do it for them. That's Sun Tzu taught them that.
How did the CCP expand? How was it able to expand political influence during the war, during the fighting?
Well, it was huge propaganda. They were doing all sorts of things to counter the Kuomintang. They were spreading, false currency, counterfeit currency into Kuomintang-held areas. They were spreading lots and lots of propaganda. They were sending their cadre in to propagandize the villages, not against the Japanese, against the Kuomintang. So it was always, the main blow was always going to be directed against the Kuomintang, because the CCP knew that the Americans would eventually defeat the Japanese. So their role was really not to worry about the Japanese, but to defeat the Kuomintang and take credit for it. So there was massive propaganda being spread in preparation for when the Japanese were gone, so that there would be a fairly easy takeover. And then, of course, the traitors in the US State Department, the Soviet agents in the US State Department, defunded the Kuomintang military, which pretty much guaranteed a Chinese Communist Party takeover.
That's an interesting point there. What exactly led to the KMT's post-war decline? Can you elaborate further on that?
Well, there was Marshall, the general. He basically defunded. Much was what happened in Vietnam years later. The South Vietnamese military was defunded by the US Congress, leading to the communist takeover. In China, this was orchestrated by Soviet agents inside the State Department, who were putting out propaganda to the Roosevelt administration that the Kuomintang was hopelessly corrupt, that the CCP was winning the hearts and minds of the people, that it was a waste of time backing the Kuomintang and better to just let the communists take over. And anyway, they would say, Mao's army, they're not really communists, they're just really agrarian reformers. All this kind of propaganda was really coming, so the CCP was spreading its own propaganda to the people on the ground in China, but the communists in the US State Department were spreading Soviet and Chinese propaganda into the Roosevelt administration to make the Roosevelt administration give up, to give up the war, to defund Chiang Kai-shek's forces, the Kuomintang forces. So China was betrayed. It was really taken over by a combination of the Soviet Union, the CCP, and US traders in the State Department.
Do you think that KMT had any suspicion at all that the CCP wanted to take over China, that it will have to confront the CCP after the war ended?
Oh, yeah, look, absolutely. They had no illusions whatsoever. The Kuomintang and the Communist Party had worked together before the war and had relationships. They knew how dirty the CCP played, but they had to get the Japanese out. That was the priority, and they hoped that they could deal with the CCP after the war. But what they didn't expect, I think, was the deep penetration, because it wasn't fully understood then. But the Soviets had 400 agents in the Truman administration, and many of them in the State Department and in agencies that dealt with supporting the Kuomintang. So they were betrayed. The Chinese communists did the same thing with Britain to betray Yugoslavia to the communists and that sort of thing. And this is quite a common thing. Right up to the Cuban Revolution, you had Soviet agents working in the State Department helping to bring communists to power. I don't think the KMT understood. They trusted the Americans. They didn't realize how deeply penetrated the US State Department was.
What was America's role in defeating the Japanese in comparison to the KMT and the CCP?
Well, the Japanese would have held China, but the Americans were coming across the Pacific, just taking island after island, and the Japanese knew that they were going to have to defend the homeland, that they had really lost the war. When it became clear after the Battle of Midway, when Japan lost much of its naval forces, its aircraft carriers, that they were going to probably lose the war. but they thought they could defend the homeland. So the decision was made. They were going to have to leave China. They were going to have to bring their troops to fight off the Americans in the Pacific and to defend the homeland. Well, that was the thinking before the atomic weapons were dropped, and that all became moot. But yes, the Japanese would probably still control China today if it hadn't been for the Americans. The Japanese had much of China tied up. They had a much superior military, and the Kuomintang and the communists were fighting each other. So the Japanese could have held on for a long time had the Americans not fought so heroically across the Pacific.
So Trevor, I just have one more thing, and I want to follow up on one thing you said at the beginning of this conversation. You said something along the lines that the CCP was providing information to the Japanese. What did you mean by that?
Well, this has been reported on. I don't have it right at hand right now, but there was evidence that the CCP was supplying military information to the Japanese to enable them to keep the Kuomintang at bay. So this is a typical communist strategy of supplying, supporting the enemy. Like, during World War II, the Soviet communists were cooperating with the Nazis, and until the Soviet Union was attacked. The communists will always supply information to anybody that's going to help them in their cause. So they considered the Japanese in some ways an ally, because the Japanese were tying up the Kuomintang and destroying the Kuomintang, and the Kuomintang was really what they saw more as their enemy than the Japanese.
You know what I find really surprising is that the CCP is providing information to the enemy and then taking credit for winning the war. Well, all right, Trevor. One last comment.
Practice. This is standard practice. The Chinese Communist Party did not liberate China. America liberated China. The CCP and the Kuomintang liberated China. But they can't let the Kuomintang create the credit for that. But this is typical communist rewriting of history. And I'm sure every Chinese school student is taught that the CCP saved China from the Japanese. I guarantee it. But it's completely false.
Yeah, that's also an unfortunate situation. But Trevor, thank you so much for talking to us about this today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me the time.
Israel has launched a new spy satellite. Defense officials say it will strengthen their surveillance capabilities across the Middle East. Israel's decades-old space program has expanded its fleet with several satellite launches in recent years. It's one of the few nations with high-resolution monitoring and intelligence-gathering capabilities. The aerospace and defense industry is a pillar of Israel's economy. The launch follows Israeli strikes in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq during 23 months of war in Gaza. Tensions are rising between the Trump administration and the European Commission over EU digital legislation. President Trump has warned of new tariffs on countries enforcing what he calls discriminatory digital rules. Our international correspondent, David Vivez, reports from Paris.
President Trump has warned that countries enforcing digital taxes or regulatory restrictions on American tech firms could face new tariffs. While he did not single out Europe, several EU rules, including the Digital Markets Act, impact US platforms. In a post on Truth Social last week, Trump warned of substantial additional tariffs and export bans on chips if what he called discriminatory digital rules are not scrapped. The Digital Services Act, or DSA, is an EU law that forces big online platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Amazon to police illegal content, limit disinformation, and protect minors. The move marks an escalation in tensions between Washington and Brussels, with the US accusing Europe of unfairly targeting American tech giants. And in May, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced a visa restriction policy for foreign nationals accused of censoring protected expression in the US. At the center of the storm is Thierry Breton, former EU commissioner who oversaw the rollout of the DSA. Nicholas Conker is an overseas representative of the U.S. Republican Party.
Last year, around this time, Thierry Breton interfered in a discussion that was supposed to take place between Donald Trump and Elon Musk by saying, "We're going to censor your discussion," which was a serious attack on democratic debate and the use of platforms and what has become of them. So there is a desire to control what citizens have the right to say and not say, and to regulate these American platforms under threat of economic pressure.
Breton was invited to testify before Congress earlier this year and has since launched blistering attacks on Trump. He refused the invitation, adding that the EU Commission would directly provide answers to the House Judiciary Committee. Breton accused the US of punitive blackmail and called on Europe to stand up to what he called American bullying, arguing that regulating online platforms is a matter of European sovereignty. Nicholas Conker says the US administration's move comes at a critical moment for social media platforms in Europe, which are targeted by the DSA.
There are some who strongly oppose it and others who give in, but we can see that platforms such as Rumble, in particular, refuse to bow to pressure, even if it means leaving certain European markets. Telegram as well, whose founder has voiced serious concerns about the pressure he's under. What we are seeing now is a reaction that truly reflects democracy, saying it is not for unelected rulers to impose their will by restricting speech on platforms. I believe pressure should instead be directed at those who create these laws, which, under the guise of moderation, affect both American users and political voices worldwide, voices that are already restricted, locked down.
For U.S. companies, the DSA means strict oversight and fines of up to 6% of global revenue for violations. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
We could see an end to vaccine mandates in Florida. State officials announced plans to scrap the requirements in their state. We have more after the break here on NTD News.
Big things are happening at Mathis Home. Come in now for 65th anniversary savings all over the store. Like this oversized sofa in an ultra soft fabric with thick premium gel cushions and 5 throw pillows. Anniversary priced at just $9.99. That's an incredible value. Just one of over 100 great sofas in stock and ready for you to enjoy tonight with fast and easy financing and free delivery. Don't miss out on 65th anniversary savings happening now at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
£6 prescription glasses from Select Specs are always great value. There are no offer codes or first-time customers only. Anyone can buy them, anytime. And you can upgrade to Select Specs Express for next-day delivery. And with deferred payment, you can spread the cost.
See now, pay later with Select Specs £6 specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options available at selectspecs.com/£6.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer. And your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Florida could become the first state to end all childhood vaccine mandates. Today, Governor Ron DeSantis said this is about medical freedom, and State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo said people have a right to make their own informed decisions.
The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them.
I think most people have really gotten interested in this in the advent of how the medical establishment acted during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you had a situation where so many of these entrenched elites were turning towards coercive measures, trying to dictate your behavior through various non-pharmaceutical interventions, mandates.
Ladapo said some mandates can be pulled by the State Department, but some would require the Florida legislature to get involved. On the department's website, it says the state requires vaccines for daycare and public schools. They include measles, chickenpox, hepatitis B, and DTaP. A Democratic state representative wrote on social media that scrapping vaccines is reckless and dangerous and could lead to outbreaks of preventable diseases. There is a new ICE detention facility called Louisiana Lockup. DHS Secretary Noem will make the announcement later this afternoon. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.